and then he can join as needed, or we can catch him back up. I don't think there's a lot of contentious, and I believe we have a quorum, correct, with this number? Yep. Okay. All right, so I'll call to order the March 11th, 2021 Public Works Committee. Can we get a roll call, please?
Okay. Chairman Weggie.
Here.
Alderman Gould. Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice. Here. Great.
Great. Move on to item 2, approval or amendment of the agenda. Any changes? We can approve that by ascension, like consension, whatever. Moving on to item 3, announcements, appointments. Don't have any of those. Moving to citizen comment number 4.
There's nobody raising their hand, so we're good.
Okay. Move on to item 5, report of committee chair and alderman. I'll go first. Just the only thing I have is Eric, happy to see the dog park construction beginning. So I know all the people I talked to down at the dog park are excited to see how that works out down there. So they're happy we're at least trying something. So appreciate you getting on that so quick. That's all I had. We'll skip Alderman Gould. Go to Steve.
No report.
Nancy.
A quick word for Dan to pass along. I had 2 different neighbors stop me and thank them, thank the city for the trash collection, especially during the really cold weather and when the roads were so bad those couple days. So just so you know that people tracked me down and stopped me to pass that word along. So that's all. That's all I have.
Okay, we don't have anything in the city administrator report. Move on to item 7. Parks and Rec. Eric, you're up.
I don't have anything at this time.
I do have a question, but if anybody else has any questions or anything they want to bring up on it with Eric. So Eric, I'm curious, what is our plan to get a pickleball net for the new pickleball court?
Yeah, we actually do have 2 nets and 2 sets of paddles and balls. Last year we did kind of a drop-in play on Monday and Wednesday night that was pretty well attended. We're going to start that up again on April 12th. What we're trying to figure out, we started to kind of look into this last year, and then with budget constraints,
right,
we kind of cut that. Is trying to find maybe something we could have on site that allows people who just show up on the courts to maybe rent or get into a box that will hold the nets and paddles. So that way, if you don't have it and you still want to play, you can come and find one of those boxes. The issue that we found last year is that most of the ones we're finding are just for paddles and balls, not for nets themselves. And so we're trying to figure that part out. But we will do at least drop in starting April 12th on Monday and Wednesday nights.
Yeah, I would encourage you, and this is just my opinion, but I guess I hadn't thought about the paddles and balls because I think everybody has their own. But if there was just a net there, even if we just chain it to a pole or something, and they can kind of drag it out so it can't be stolen. I don't know. I would encourage us to take a look at that or something.
Yeah, we're looking at a couple different options.
Okay. Any other questions for Eric? Okay, great. Moving on to planning and zoning. Anything for us, Lisa?
My reports are under new business items tonight, so nothing at this time.
Great. And then Public Works, Dan?
Yeah, there's a few different items. We can take them in any order, but the order that they're on the agenda, just a quick update on street lights. I know it isn't your ward, but Ward 1 for York Village, we had staked earlier this week. It was Monday. I met with the surveyors. So we kind of figured out where the solar ones need to go. They're developing the easements for those locations. And then as soon as we have the easements for the private side ones, we'll have those executed. And then from there, we can plan on getting those installed. And then switching gears to Brentwood Forest, there are 5 proposed underground feeds, and then I have 2 locations that we should be able to upgrade existing overhead. So the 2 overhead ones that are old technology, they're the old metal halides. I'm going to put in a request to upgrade those to LEDs. All the other ones along Brentwood have been improved to LEDs as they burned out and been replaced. And the 5 locations that are underground, we would have Reinhold Electric. They agreed to honor their original cost from a little over a year and a half ago for doing underground. If you recall, we did an RFP. We originally got no bids. Then when we bid it a second time, I believe we received 5. And they were basically half the cost of their competitors. So they said they would honor the same price arrangement with that contract. And then we'd have them do those 5 locations. So right now we're just waiting for Ameren to confirm that those source poles work in Brentwood Forest. If they do, fine. If not, I've got an alternate picked out for each of those sites. So that's pretty much streetlights. We should be getting those, early spring, getting those installed and ready. And then the next item up was sanitation. There was some questions about Brentwood Forest and how Brentwood Forest is different than some of the other collection areas. We tried, Brentwood Forest, if you look at the municipal codes for St. Louis County, they actually are requiring them to put their trash in receptacles, but the county does not require single family homes. You could put it in a bag, and some people do. Most people, put it in a receptacle of some sort, either a card or a can. And then regarding their recycling, we were trying to get them to put that in a recycling bin as well. There was some opposition with that, which is fine. So we're still picking up their recycling if they fold down the cardboard and it's truly recycling and it's on Monday. I went today and last Thursday. There's a few residents in Brentwood Forest that put their recycling out on Thursday. Well, we don't pick up recycling on Thursdays. It's only on Monday. But we do pick up their trash twice a week. It's on Mondays and Thursdays. So I can see where there'd be some confusion, but it's on the website. It's on a schedule. So if there's anything loose in bags in Brentwood Forest, I know I took some pictures and threw it in the memo. We leave it, and then Brentwood Forest Management picks it up. They're supposed to have receptacles, and the only way to get them to do the right thing is to just leave it and have somebody else try to enforce it. So that's pretty much it for that item. And then the last item I had for Public Works update, the Promenade South entrance, unfortunately, that used to be, or I guess fortunately, whichever way you look at it, but depends on which side of the coin you're on. So for Sandstone Group, the management company, Withrow was the old street there. It runs in between Dobbs and Total Wine as a point of reference. And we always thought, Public Works thought, where those decorative columns are going south back towards Metro Lighting, that was our limit. Well, it's not. From the decorative columns going north, it ends closer to PetSmart. So there's I included the exhibit. There's the corners were marked up there. So the bigger problem for us now is that is ours, and it should be maintained as such. So whenever we do our RFP for streets, we can figure out how much of that needs to be upgraded or improved, and then figure out what that cost is. Can we afford it, or do we need to try to phase it in? Typically we're under budget on streets, and we have a decent quantity of streets. So we were just going to include it as a budget line item, basically as an alternate. If we can afford the alternate, fine. If we can't, at least we know moving forward with the next budget cycle what it's going to run, and then go according to that. So I don't know if you have any questions on any of those items or something that's off the page entirely.
Yeah, Steve. Oh, real fast. Hey, Kelly, can you note that Jeff has joined us as well? Thank you.
Yes, I noted it on my notes here.
Yeah, Steve.
And has there been any talk with Sandstone on maybe assigning that street over to them?
I haven't discussed that with them. I wanted to bring it to the committee first to see what your preference is. That would be my preference too. If we make these improvements, I'd like to see us, basically replat it and do a dividing line closer to those columns like we had originally thought. And then that way, going from the column south, we would be responsible for that. But the rest of it that goes into the development that's in the parking lot areas would be theirs. I don't know why it wasn't changed years ago, but it wasn't. So we know what we have now, at least.
Well, I think when Promenade was originally built, if I can remember, I don't think Dobbs was in the original plan, or that building that I think was like a golf discount.
Right, yeah, Golf Galaxy came about years later. You're correct that was empty. It wasn't part of the original, Trader Joe's and Target and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I think that's maybe how it got somehow missed. But I mean, I'd like to see if, I don't know if we'd have to do the improvements first before we turned it over to them or what, but I think it's worth a chat with them.
Yep. Yeah, I can notify the contact that we have. Lisa had given me her information. So now that we have the final plat from TWM, I can forward it to her and discuss, how to move forward from here.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have an issue with that? Seems like a smart thing to do for me too. Nancy, Jeff, any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, Nancy.
So on the street lights in York, this has been such a long project. Is there any way to like maybe put the ones that are going to be in York Hills that were never even the original lights that are going to go in those circles? Is there a way to like get some lights up? Because that just seems an easier thing than there just seems to be an issue with the residents. And now there's one across from one of the Cobras that somebody's already paying for. It just would be nice to get some lights up in there.
Yeah, I had commented earlier today, Alderman Plufkett asked about that. And my priority would be to get those in as well, the York Hills 2 lights, because as soon as we get the okay from the trustees, we can proceed with those. It would just be notifying the utilities, marking up the islands another time, and then getting the equipment, renting the auger and lift and all that stuff. But I thought once those are erected, then that'll give people a good idea of what they're going to look like. And it gives me something to measure the actual light conditions after that. Because the question, as you mentioned, well, if one's across from the other, is it going to be too bright? I don't know the answer. I know what it looks like on paper, but it could be totally different once we get out there and measure it.
Yeah, I'm not concerned it's too bright. It just seems like if we're only going to put a handful of lights in there, it's unfortunate that it would have to be across from a light that already exists. But I thought your idea of the going ahead and getting those ones in York Hills in is a good one. I was sort of surprised we didn't have anyone at our ward meeting this week talking about it. We had a lot of York people in January asking about it. Trustees, as you well know, ask about it pretty regularly. So I'd love to get some, since those lights have been sitting.
Yeah, number 9's an
that's for
alternate
some time.
location too, number 9 York, because I thought, well, if 18 doesn't work out, I need to have an alternate so I can get these 5 in.
Yeah.
So TWM, when they did the survey work, they also went out to number 9. So I thought, if nothing else, I have data for number 9, whether it's this phase or future phases.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yep.
Jeff, any questions? I have a couple for you, Dan. On the Brentwood Forest, so I mean, I think the original issue was that the boxes don't fit into the recycling, and so it sounds like we've clarified as long as they're flattened and placed next to them, we will pick them up, which I think resolves that issue. But it sounds like they're still on a learning curve on which days and what they can put in. So I think it's a very good thing to continue to put OOP stickers when they're contaminated.
Yeah, that has helped quite a bit, those stickers. And I included, the mock-up that we have that we go with the vendor, and, it's pretty inexpensive, and, staff's gotten used to doing it, and we get the little receipts at the end of each shift and go through it. And if someone calls, we can tell them what they've done wrong and how they can correct it.
Yeah, I think we got to continue to train all our residents on the right stuff to put in there. So I would encourage you to continue to do that. So 2 quick follow-ups up. Last meeting, we talked about bulk item pickup at the other condo at the villas. And I was curious if there was any movement on that, or if you'd heard back or had a chance to reach out to those homeowner associations yet, or condo associations.
I've reached out to, I'm looking at my notes, reached out to the Hanley Station folks a couple times. And then most recently, I left a message today. I finally got a person that I guess does the day-to-day management to figure out if there is a spot that we could place, household collections. So that's moving forward. I have not contacted the villas yet. I did go out to the villas just to, kind of do a little reconnaissance. I don't really know where they would put theirs. That's the more challenging one, because they have a fence on the south side that separates them and the YMCA. Then there's a very small entrance that's private that goes into their villas. If you come in from Brentwood Boulevard on Evans, that's narrow, and it leads right up to a parking garage. The only spot I thought might work would be coming off of Rose Avenue. They've got an entrance coming that way closer to the creek. But if they're to follow what everybody else follows, putting their stuff by the curb, is anyone going to go from their villa and haul it all the way to the curb on Rose Avenue. I don't know. But we can ask that.
Yeah, and I, again, this is just my personal opinion, but I don't think we should try and push that rope too much. I don't think if there's no appetite from the condo associations that
Right.
to this on that, then, I think we kind of say we tried, right? So, we don't want to continue to push that. And then one final question, I heard that talking about the Rosalie STP project, so the sidewalk, I know we were trying to time that with the MSD work, and I've only heard anecdotally, I don't know if this is true or not, that MSD work is now moving out into 2022. So I don't know if
I've
you
heard that.
Okay, so that might be something to look into, because I believe we have to finish that work in 2021, correct?
Yeah, we're programmed in. We need to finish our work in 21, and that's what we're scheduled to do. I did speak with Horner and Schifrin. They had mentioned some information about driveway aprons that they'd like to pursue and sent that to planning. So if we do change the driveway aprons as they're designed now have a slope that it'll work, but they'd like to flatten it out. So the way to make it work a little better is to raise the apron where it meets the street by an inch and a half. And then it's a little more of a gradual slope to get up to the sidewalk elevation, then into the driveways. So they're working on the final plans. And then once the final plans are done, which will be in the next couple of weeks, they'll send that to MoDOT. MoDOT will grant us approval, hopefully, of the final set. And then we would advertise for bids. So the advertising period would be in April. And then we would collect those bids. And then we would need to get concurrence from MoDOT for the bids themselves, which we're thinking, notice to proceed. By the time you get a contract and insurance and all the other things like that, it'd probably be like June, July, when the person would start. But in the contract documents, it's 90 calendar days to finish, which would put you in early fall, maybe September, October. So we should be fine with completing by 21 if we maintain this schedule like they outlined.
Okay, so we weren't going to wait on MSD no matter what. We were going to try and time it, but
Yeah, I can't because of the funding source. It's an STP grant. So, last year was the right away. The year prior to that, was the preliminary. So now we're in the construction period.
okay.
We
All
can't
right,
really
well-
follow the MSD one. And, I guess I'll call MSD to see what their schedule is. If they were going to go out for bids and select a contractor, maybe they had really high bids. I don't know. It's worth pursuing.
Yeah, so just a heads up, but I'm glad we're not waiting on that then. So that's good. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to item 9. So first up is the Northwest Pavilion. So David, I assume that's you?
No,
Sure.
I'll be taking this one tonight.
I was just say, I'll let Eric do this.
Prior to me doing that, I did see Alderman Gould had a question. I don't know if he wants to take that question now.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Yeah, you weren't looking. I was going to follow up with Dan after. It's not that big a deal, but I was just going to say that, in addition to the OOP stickers, I think a social media campaign to clear up some of the confusion with not only recycling, but, bulk materials. I think there was some, I think when people get the oops, their first reaction is anger. As opposed to, they didn't take this, they should have taken it, and as opposed to self-reflection and, hey, what did I do to cause this? So I think in conjunction with the stickers, maybe, some posts that can be then shared out to the community pages of kind of what's accepted, what's not, what to look for, what to use, et cetera. Because I think recently we saw one that came up with light construction material. It wasn't, I don't even know if I'd call it construction material. But somebody was complaining that it wasn't picked up because it was not contained, it was sticking out of the bin. So I just think, sometimes if we can get ahead of that, or when people do get the oops, then they, can go on and have a reference. That would be something to consider as well.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
All right.
Okay.
So I do have a quick presentation about the next step in the design. But before I talk, I just wanted to mention that, yeah, we do have Michael and David from Christner, and Colette is from Navigate Building Solutions. She helped out a lot with the cost estimate. So all three of them are here to help me if you have any additional questions that I can't answer. But this is kind of the next step in the pavilion process. We started with bringing multiple concepts to the Public Works Committee. We decided on one, refined that concept a little bit in the last meeting, and now we've been working on a cost estimate. And so that's what we are going to talk about a little bit quickly here tonight. I share my screen real quick. Craig also apologizes for not being here. He is, as everyone knows, hopefully a dad at this point. We're still waiting, one or the other. So just to kind of talk about quickly, since I want to talk about the budget real quick, and we talked about in November of 2019, when we first brought this to the board, the additional unfunded projects was about $11 million. $5 million of that it was in the phase 1 and phase 2 trails, and we're able to kind of whittle that down to really just a couple $100,000. So that's what phase 2 is, $100,000 in the project. The water, the 319 grant is again $200,000. The dog park, and then the bulk of it is the event lawn and the playground and natural water play area, which gives us a grand total of $5 million still in these unfunded projects. Just as a quick recap, Craig wanted me to mention this, is that we do right now have about $11.4 million in excess funding, not including contingency. So even if we funded all of that with with money from that, we still have $6.4 million left. Obviously, staff is still working on grants for these type of things. I've gotten a couple already. So we talked about just a quick nuts and bolts of what the cost estimate is going to be. We're looking about $1.7 million construction cost, materials, furniture and fixtures, technology, all those fun sort of things. Most of it's going to be in the building, and then some in the site and contingency. It's primarily there. The soft cost is the design work with Christner and a few other things, and then you see the contingency. So right now, we're looking at about a little over $2 million, with about $61,000 under budget. So that's where we're at right now. And then I know at the last meeting we talked about a couple alternates, and so we wanted to bring those tonight to talk about those. One was the nano wall glass system in lieu of just doors. That would be an additional $32,000. And then some of the sustainability ideas, the geothermal would be an extra $126,000, and solar panels be $68,000. So what we're really looking for here tonight is to kind of give you guys the update of where we're at. If you have questions on how we got to those numbers, either myself or Colette can help you with those. And then really just talk about, is the alternate something that we want to move forward with? And would that be increasing the budget or trying to find room in the budget and doing some other different things as we move forward? So that is a really quick nuts and bolts conversation about where we are with the cost estimate.
Thanks, Eric. I'll open it up for questions. I can't see everybody, so just speak up.
Yeah, Eric, this is Jeff. Question on the geothermal and the solar panels. This is the cost of the installation cost. But have you guys had an analysis of a long-term efficiency or anything like that we would gain out of having those systems?
I don't know if we've done that full analysis yet. I don't know if Colette or Michael talked about that. I mean, ultimately, when you think about the solar panels, you usually look at about a 6 to 10 year cost recovery on cost, depending on how much we get back. The geothermal, I'll be honest, I don't have a good frame of mind of that. I don't know if Michael or David or Colette can speak to that a little bit.
We haven't done a specific study for this project. If it's something you are interested in, we would need to give the design team, the mechanical engineer and electrical engineer, some time to come up with what they would, let them get a little further in their design so we have something to compare to.
Okay, that sounds good. And then on the panels instead of doors, what are the pros and cons? I mean, obviously the pros of the panels is that you can sort of make it a fully open air kind of feel. What are the cons to going that route? Is there maintenance costs or anything like that, concerns that,
Yeah, so for me, yeah, and again, Michael can help me out with this one if he has anything to add, but for the functionality of the facility, the pros are to have that wall just opens up that space and really makes it feel like the indoor-outdoor is one space. So it really works together. If you do want to be separate, you can close the walls and you still have the side door, or to make it two different spaces. So it makes the functionality of that space a lot easier. The cons is two very basic things, is that they're more expensive than doors. And typically with something like that, if there's repairs, those repairs are going to cost more than a normal door. Luckily, the technology has come a long way where you're seeing hopefully as good as life expectancy on those nano walls as you are on regular doors. A couple of years ago, maybe not would have said that, but right now I think that it's gotten to be in better shape. So, Michael, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Yeah, I'd just say a couple of things. So the nano wall would be a high quality product. You can there's some different manufacturers out there, but we like nano wall. They hold up well over time. They're pretty easy to operate too. So just in terms of actually opening them up and using them, the facilities people like them. And then pretty good thermal performance on those two. So you're not really sacrificing energy efficiency to go that route. It's really the thing that usually works against it and kills it is just the cost. They're not cheap. So.
Yeah, and from a securing the facility, any, when we're not around, are they a fairly secure system?
Well, you can get it with operable panels within. So we can set it up a couple different ways. We can set it up where you have separate doors for would be one approach that you kind of use as your typical passage kind of entry doors. And then you just open the nano wall up when you have an event. So that would be one way to secure it. And then you could also have it where within the nano wall, you have a swinging door. So that could be lockable too, and another way to secure it. So you shouldn't have to compromise the security would be the thought there.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective on it is I know it costs more, but that's the only drawback to an event building that has closed off walls to this amazing park space and event lawn. So I think the value we would get and the versatility we get from a nano wall is, in my mind, pretty good investment because it'll create the experience that connects people to the park more than just looking through glass.
And it also, and I would support that too, because it also works quite nicely with the terrace concept too that we had. So, the flow would be from the event space to the terrace and then to the park beyond. So it really kind of all works nicely together for that wall to go away and really kind of blur the indoor and outdoor together.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff on the nano. I'd check that box right now. But I guess the HVAC system that's baked into that $2 million, what kind of system is that? I mean, I understand electric and AC, but how's the heating supplied? I don't know
Michael,
who's
do you want to address that or you want me to? Okay.
Colette, did you want to speak to that? That's fine.
Yeah, I can talk to that. In the restrooms, there is some mini split systems, so it's heating and cooling. In the event space, there is a larger split system, so heating and cooling. Possibly some baseboard heating to just boost that a little bit when necessary because of so much glass down there. And then exhaust fans were needed also.
So there wouldn't be any natural gas used at all. It would be all electric. What you're saying?
I think your units, your split systems usually would be gas.
Okay. All right. That's all I got right now.
Yeah, Nancy?
So I totally agree on the nano wall. And I actually have it's not a nano wall, but I have one of these in our house. And the only thing I would say is maybe the nano wall's a little different, but it can be quirky to close. And so because there would be a lot of people using it, and I just want to raise that because if different people are going to be closing it or handling the door or closing the door, if that would hurt it in a public building like this. So I don't know if Michael, if you have more to add on that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think typically you would want, so I mean, if you had, so the swinging door that could be within the nano wall system, that would be, you know, kind of foolproof. For the actual opening wall itself, I think you'd want your facilities people to be opening that up. I don't think you would want, you probably wouldn't want your like event guests to be able to open that and close that. And, you know, there is a little bit of kind of work you have to do to that. So I don't think people would just kind of take that on naturally, you know. But yeah, you might want to like think about some kind of protocol for that. But I would agree. I mean, it's you know, it's kind of a heavy duty system that we would specify there. So I wouldn't worry about it being abused, but yeah, I also agree that just like you don't want the public opening and closing that wall.
I would just say for somebody, oh, it's chilly, I'm gonna pull the fold, because ours is the same. We have a passage door and then the folding one, and yeah, like even my kids sort of don't quite close it right. I'm like, oh, you have to do it this, and I've showed them over and over. But in a public space, somebody got chilly and they tried to close it and it got off on the, you know, I just. It's just a concern that we, I don't think we shouldn't do it because of that, but it's a concern that probably should be thought about as we.
And I know operationally, we've spoken in staff internally very quickly about what we might need to do as far as rentals or big events and things like that. We haven't gone too far down the wall or that path specifically because we didn't know if the nano wall would be in there, and the nano wall would add a little bit more as far as staffing, those type of things. But that's all stuff we can figure out operationally.
Yeah, so
I say add that, and I would, oh, sorry, Brenda. And then I'd also say I would be supportive of the solar and geothermal depending upon the payback. So I kind of like to see what the numbers are on that before we decide whether or not to add, or before I decide whether or not to add that.
Sure.
Yeah, so Eric and Colette, I mean, we seem to all be in violent agreement on the nano wall here. I mean, is that something that the Public Works can direct moving? Because I know that will start eating into contingency, or do we move that up to the big board?
Yeah, if we move that up to the big board, we're still under budget. But we didn't want to, you know, we didn't want to just put it up there. We wanted to make sure we had that conversation. So we'd still be, Delta's about $29,000 under budget if we put in the nano wall now.
Yeah, and then what's the sensitivity on timing for not just the nano wall, but the geothermal and the solar panel in terms of design? How much time do we have collectively to make that decision if we do want to go get that analysis done?
I'll have to defer to Michael and David on that one.
Yeah, I think we need to check with G&W Engineering and see what they think that time frame will be, and we can get back to you as soon as we get some.
Yeah, because I would love to throw that over to the Sustainability Commission as well, and get their input on it. And you know, I'm sure they're going to be in favor, but you know, at least let them know that that's going on. Yeah, Jeff.
Well, didn't last time we discussed this, you had talked about designing the roof in a way that the solar and everything could be, like maybe we could move forward and engineer the building for a future add of the solar panels without too much over engineering?
I think the solar panels are pretty easy actually to add. You know, we had proposed a metal roof where you could actually clamp an array to the seams in the roof. So that's something that you could do or not do. depending on what the, the payback was on that. There is an inverter that you need. So there's a little bit of equipment that you need that would take up some space in the mechanical room. It's not a huge area though. So I don't think there's a major design change that would be required if you decided to add the PV array. So I would encourage us to go ahead and do the payback analysis on that.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Michael. I think the solar panels are probably the easier ones. The geothermal, that's going to take more time in the design and engineering, and once we get that back. And I don't know how much time that would take, but the solar panel seems to be the easy one. The geothermal will be the one that takes a little bit more analysis.
Yeah, and I'm a little less comfortable speaking to what that is going to do to our mechanical room as well. But I think we should also talk with our engineers on that. If you guys are interested in it, I mean, I think it's a great sort of sustainability kind of thing to celebrate if you're able to afford that. So.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, when I proposed that, I didn't realize the cost was going to be so high. I don't know where we'd get our return back, if ever. You know, what was that number? $126,000. I mean, Colette, have you had any experience with those systems?
Too much. We're prepared to put one in coming up soon, but we don't have one to try and true. Hey, does it really give the payback or not? But I think maybe we'll talk to G&W. They may have some rule of thumbs. You know, without going full into design, we can just ask them what are some rule of thumbs. We also have another source that for some sustainable buildings we can talk to about what the payback is.
Today we heard from Andy Burkemper. If you all know, he's the chair of the SUSCOM Commission, and we asked him to give a testimony for Solar Grow, which we're participating on. So him and his family, like Nancy, have solar panels at their house. So this is residential compared to this type of building. And in his testimony, I believe he indicates that they expect a payback over, I thought he said 16 years. I'm looking through this to see what he says. So just as a comparison, I'm just sharing that with you. So the payback could possibly be 25 years on this. So it's not something that's going to be immediate. And it's a matter of if we're comfortable with the payback that drags on that long.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges, but ours is closer to, it's a little over 20 years on our payback on our solar. So it's,
but we're talking
it may be quicker on this kind of building though, because of the usage.
The thing with the geothermal is, defer to Colette, Michael, and David here, is that when we talked about a net zero building, if that's something that we wanted to really work toward, the geothermal would definitely help with that. Now we're doing obviously other things, mechanical, engineering, electrical, the solar panels would help. So if it's to truly get to a net zero building, it's discussions like geothermal or other to be expensive items that we would have to be looking at to really get to that net zero.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Steve, let me just, I feel like, I think it's worth looking into the payback on the geothermal. It might not close, but I still think that would be something maybe for consideration as Steve pointed out last time, this is going to be our landmark building right on Great Rivers Greenway, and to be able to say that it's net zero, even if that payback, I think the payback might be more attractive than we think, because we're starting from a greenfield operation here. So if you're going to have to dig a well or however you're doing that geothermal, if you're running, stuff in the lake or whatever you're doing, it might not be as bad. Just my 2 cents. Yeah, Steve.
Colette?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was 20 years to get paid back. What's the useful life of a solar panel before it starts to degrade and you have to replace it?
That's a good question too. I know I knew that a couple years ago when we looked at them, but I don't recall. I don't recall a life of them. But you have a point that you do also need to replace or do some upgrade to them.
I think it's
We-
about 30. I think it's about 30 years.
Okay,
Okay.
that's better than I thought. I was thinking it was less, but we can find that out and let you know.
I know, sorry, Colette. I know when we were looking at putting, working with Ameren to install the solar panels in the community center, they're saying 25 guaranteed, but they're seeing 30 to 35 typically for the arrays they've been putting up.
Yeah, they're like, you get it, like if something goes wrong in the first 25, then you're set. And then the next, they last longer, but they're not,
Yep.
they're not under the manufacturer's warranty.
And I guess Nancy, I don't have a lot of knowledge on solar panels on residential. I don't at all, but then is there I know there's the inverter, but is there a battery backup?
That's additional. And that's pretty expensive, and there's not much payback for that. Like, it would be hard to justify that if you're trying to get the payback. You could justify if you want the battery backup, and not lose the stuff in your fridge, but those numbers are those are expensive, the battery backup.
Battery is not required.
Battery is not required, so you don't have to have the battery backup. You can just have the arrays, and then it connects to an Ameren. There's a special Ameren box that's about the size of a fuse box, and there's one outside, and it's outside, and there's like a flip handle. It's not.
So you're just supplementing what's coming off the grid is all you're doing, and reducing the use of that. So at night, if this facility needed lighting, it just goes back to the grid, right? There's no supplement, there's no backup that's been generated in a battery form.
Right.
Okay.
One
But
thing,
the little I know about the batteries, the technology, I think in California and some places where it's really expensive, they'll use battery backup at night, and it makes more sense. But I guess if we were trying to get to a net zero building, we might want to do something like that. But the dollars straight up don't make, at least on a residential, don't make a ton of sense.
Sure.
Colette, do you have something there?
just something to keep in mind. I mean, this shouldn't stop the conversation, but do think about like some of the renderings that Eric showed in the presentation with that natural looking building with the stone and the wood, a metal roof. Picture solar panels on that. So do keep that in mind as we talk about all this. I mean, it's not, it shouldn't outweigh your attempt and your concern for being responsible utility wise, but do keep that in mind too. You're aiming here for a very beautiful natural looking building. Solar panels will draw from that because it's a peaked roof, so you're going to see them on that roof. So keep that in mind as you consider it too.
Yeah, Steve.
I'm sorry to take up time trying to get educated on all this, but what you just said, Colette, what if you move panels off the building facility and have like a field? Does that greatly, I guess that's very expensive to do?
I don't know if it's expensive. That's probably prime real estate Eric would need to talk to.
Oh, we can put it in the dog park and let the dogs run underneath.
Hey.
Shade, dog shade.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, the only we've talked about the field and trying to do some solar fields. The issue, especially around there, is where we're above floodplain level. Is stuff that is prime real estate that we're using for playground, for the pavilion, the vet lawn, all the other green space would be great, is within the floodplain, and that's not where you want to put solar panels.
Right.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I was just at the zoo, and there was, I should have taken pictures of it, but there was a family sort of shade pavilion that the entire structure that created the shade was solar panels in it. And it looked pretty nice. I totally agree with you, Colette, that we don't want to destroy the aesthetic of the building and this natural beauty of all the materials that are being selected, and then an array of solar panels. But I think there might be some interesting ways to do it. And to Steve's point, I mean, perhaps we could look at what they did at the zoo, and maybe there's another shade structure that's created near the building that was the entire shade structure was the solar panels that then fed power to the building. So I don't know. I should have taken pictures at the time, but there
That's
is one at the zoo. It's pretty cool.
I've seen that. I've also, when I was in Traverse City, Michigan, last year before that, they had stuff. They basically had a street that was closed off, and they basically created a seating, like a raised seating area with solar panels above too. And so that got me, and I've had initial conversations with Ameren of whether or not they would actually approve that type of usage as part of their program, but I haven't really thought about it doing it on our own. But yeah, those could look really nice and provide shade for seating. You think about, maybe as we move into the playground discussion where we could do that, where parents are sitting around and, having that sort of shade structure as well. So yeah, there's a lot of options for us as well.
And
Okay, I'm going to wrap
can
this up.
Can I just add one more point on that? And sorry to keep going on this, but just to kind of build on what was said, we would certainly be able to illustrate, if we were to put them on the building or to think about that, we could certainly illustrate that too, so that you could see what it looks like and, not have a nasty surprise during construction on that.
Okay, I'm gonna close this down, but I just want to make sure we have clarity on what the direction is here. I mean, and I'm really kind of looking to Bola and Eric there. So, I mean, is the nano wall in based on this conversation? Is there another follow-on step there?
I mean, if you guys are okay with putting that in the budget, it can contain within the budget, so we'd be good. And then we'll move forward with the research on the geothermal and the solar panels. And then finally, I think Michael brings up a good point. If you want to get us you want us to get a quick design with what the solar panels would be on, what it would look like with the solar panels on the roof, we could have that as well.
Okay, and then can we propose this to Andy to go on the SUSCOM agenda as well for their input and feedback? And I think, Eric, you could just present that. I don't think we need to bring everybody in.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, and then also, I mean, we've talked about this workshop that's probably end of April kind of thing for the playground. I know that's coming up, and this seems like maybe a topic, if the schedule can support, this would be another thing that when we're hashing out kind of the next phase of this with the rest of the board, this would be a good thing for that as well, in my opinion.
Actually, I believe on Monday, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a scheduled presentation on the Board of Aldermen agenda, right?
There is for the design.
For the design, right. So everything that this committee has discussed, including what you're discussing tonight, will be presented to the board, because in my conversation with the mayor and others, it seems like not everybody has been following this. So before we get too much further, we thought it would be best to ask Michael to come present this to the board on Monday. So it is on the agenda for Monday night.
Okay, great. Okay, move on to 9B, Northwest Playground RFQ.
All right, that is me as well. You have a memo and everything else in your board packet. I also, with Craig, put together a small presentation as well, so let me get to that.
Eric, I'm going to step out. I have another board meeting to get to, but it was nice to meet all of you.
Yeah, thanks, Colette. Thanks, Mike and David. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so the playground. Just give a brief, quick update on this as well. We, the city put out the RFQ for the Northwest Park Destination Playground and Natural Water Play area. The RFQ was for the planning, design, and construction of the playground. It was issued in January, and basically talked about the consultants design all elements of the destination playground. The playground should be a hybrid of the nature playscape, as well as newer traditional playgrounds, which we discussed at the Public Works meeting. And then we also included what the Public Works meeting discussed, which is we'd like to see what the design team would propose with the construction budget level of $2 million, $3.5 and $5 million. So we did receive 6 responses to the RFQ. The selection committee of a mix of Parks and Recreation staff, as well as Public Works staff, Dan was in there as well, and Navigate Building Solutions. So all of us put together, get to our final 3, which was Planning Design Studio, SWT, and Hitchcock. Hitchcock is a firm out of Chicago that kind of specialize in the $5 to $10 million range playgrounds. So we completed the interviews on February 24th, and we basically came to the unanimous conclusion that we wanted to recommend SWT. So there's a number of reasons. Was SWT has experience with destination playgrounds in the region. We've talked about O'Day Park. They also designed Tillis Park right across the street, and also Veterans Tribute Park in St. Charles, which I actually went out to this weekend, and my kids had a blast. They also provided the selection committee with the best vision of the $2, $3.5, and $5 million playground, going as so far as even starting to map out some sketching of it. And I'll tell you, my kids love the $5 million version of it, of course. Not that they have anything to do with this election, but I might not get to go home. And then finally, they're the only team that consisted entirely of local staff. Obviously, Hitchcock was from Chicago. PDS had a consultant from Oregon that was going to help with the main playground and naturescape play, which was great that they're going outside their box. But again, SWT was all. And we just felt that they had the best presentation. So that's our recommendation, is to move forward with SWT. And if you guys, what we do is kind of the next steps. If you guys would approve that tonight, it would be on the Board of Aldermen for approval for March 15th. And that way they can start working on that 2, 3.5, and 5 million, start refining that, and be ready for that work session in April or early May with the board. So that's kind of where we're at. The late April, we want to make sure that we have the new alder person from Ward 4 on board before we have that workshop. So that's kind of our timeline. We'll actually bring some of that back to the April 8th, coming back to Public Works and have that discussion a little bit more with you guys. I'm sure they'll probably tease those designs to see what you guys are thinking and kind of give them the path forward to get them ready for the April or May committee meeting. So that's, again, a real quick presentation, but happy to ask or answer any questions.
Yeah, Jeff.
I'd support the SWT recommendation. I think they're a great firm. I also would recommend that we follow, I think the process with Christner here on the event lawn building has gone really well. So I would follow those best practices of sort of having them share iterations along the way to us so we can provide input. And I think that creates a lot more efficiency and a better product in the end. So, you know.
That sounded like a motion that you made.
And I'll second that motion.
I said that in a motion form, didn't I? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other discussion or questions on the question on the?
Just added to what Jeff said, we also agree. That's why we're having them come to, if it gets approved, to the April 8th Public Works Committee meeting, even prior to coming to the board workshop. So again, they'll hopefully dazzle you as much as they dazzled us, and we'll really get kind of a focused vision on what their vision is, which is, it's an incredible vision.
Yeah, I'll say I visited O'Day and Veterans Tribute Park. I keep calling it the wrong thing, but I'll tell you, the Veterans Memorial one, just, it feels like Brentwood bound, honestly, when I was there. And so I think we got the right team here. So I fully support this. Okay, can we do all in favor, say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move into item 10, new business, discussion of the City of Brentwood table of permit fees.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this one, kick this one off. So tonight we just really wanted to get into a dialogue with the Public Works Committee, what we think is a really important topic, and that is a review of all of our current fees that the Planning and Development Department collects for the City of Brentwood, fees, applications, inspections, and there's just quite a bit that we actually do provide to the community. So there's a lot of different fees and things to look at, and I was trying to think, how could we actually kind of best sort through all of this? And so tonight what we were going to talk about is kind of how I put them in 3 categories, and that's why it's showing up on your agenda for 3 different discussions. But basically for tonight, this again is dialogue. There's no action that's required from the committee this evening. There's not even any recommendations that staff is going to make tonight. So in essence, we're going to kind of go through all 3 of these at one time. But again, we think this is really an important project, and I kind of heard that the Public Works just needed to take on some more projects, so that's why we're here. You guys are pretty loaded up, but nevertheless, this hasn't been undertaken for a while, so I do think it's critical that we start on this path. And again, I had mentioned that I wanted to kind of discuss 3 categories. The first category, which is related to the table of permit fees on the agenda, those are really in the category of building permit fees, things that are relative to construction permits, mechanical, electric, plumbing permits, and the inspections that we do for those types of permits. And then other related building and construction fees would be things like demolition permits, facility permits, fire safety system permits, excavation, curb cut permits. And I would also probably put the contractor's registration license in this category, and even possibly sign permits. And so these group of fees or category of fees was actually reviewed by the board last probably in about 2014. I don't know if some of you would remember that or not, but this one might be kind of the easier one to undertake for the fact that, again, we have this table of fees that list out these different permit fees and so forth. And that's included in chapter 500 building regulations of the municipal code, which was included in your agenda attachments. So in order to kind of prep for this and figure out what maybe we should be charging and so forth, we are doing research in terms of talking to other municipalities, communities that we feel are comparable to Brentwood or just our neighboring communities. So to give you just an idea of information we're gathering for this process, we've talked to Clayton, Crestwood, Creve Coeur, Kirkwood, Maplewood, Olivet, Richmond Heights, Shrewsbury, Sunset Hills, Webster Groves, and then we even threw in St. Louis County and what they're charging for these things, just kind of as an outlier. And so we've got a lot of great information back. It takes up a Excel sheet that is basically could be wallpaper in my office here. So really good information to share with you, and that will be forthcoming. But again, this is just kind of a preview, I guess. But what I thought would be important tonight is, again, just introduce these 3 categories. But with each one, that's why I invited Steve. Steve Muscoff is on tonight, our building official. And so what I was going to ask for Steve, just on this first category, if he could just very generally just go through how we calculate our building permit fees now. And also maybe just talk generally, it was something else we included in your agenda attachments, but along with just kind of comparing what other communities are doing, that's all great information to have, but maybe there's a new method out there that we should just even consider that would actually work better for Brentwood. So we are thinking outside the box when we have this opportunity. So the other thing that I'll just have Steve just touch upon tonight is ICC, the International Code Council. I know this committee is very familiar with the ICC. They're the ones that are the organization that actually publish those building code updates on those 3-year cycles. So you all remember that when you helped us update the codes, building codes, and we went from 2009 to 2018. So the same organization now has devised this building valuation method that some communities or jurisdictions now are using in order to assess their building permit fees. So with that, Steve, again, I know just if you could just give kind of, again, just a quick overview of how we assess our permits now, and then if you want to just talk a little bit about the building valuation that we're looking at that. So.
Sure. The way they're calculated right now is pretty much a set straight fee for all building permits. Our fee factor for construction is $6 per thousand of construction cost. There is a processing fee of $25, and there is a $25 per inspection fee on the project. I guess typically on a new home, there's probably 8 to 10 inspections that are in there. Those, and then the $6 per thousand. It is a pretty simple, compared to the ICC method, it's a pretty simple formula. The building valuation data that is available online from the International Code Council. Their last one was August of 2020. And they have a construction cost table for each use group. So that, they run through all the assembly uses, business, educational, factory. Each one of those has and based on the type of construction, has a different square foot cost. Their formula is a little bit in the weeds. It's a little drawn out. You first have to set a multiplier, which is your building department budget is a ratio of the building department budget over the total annual construction value. So their example calls out if you want to recover 75% of your department budget through fees, it would be something on their example. It says a $300,000 budget times 75% divided by $30 million, which is their total annual construction value for the year that you're wanting to use. That then is plugged into another formula, which is the actual fee amount is gross area times square foot of construction cost from the applicable section in the table, times the permit fee multiplier. My experience with this, it tends to run a little high. And that's typically because of the multiplier. That's the variable I would think you'd use to adjust it. Everything else is fixed in your information that you have. That's pretty much it for that. There are a few footnotes on their construction table that would apply to like additions and things like that. So you don't get slammed on a construction cost for a kitchen remodel or something on that order, where you're not building the building, you're doing remodeling. So it does have some safeguards in there to keep people from really getting hammered. Other than that, I think that I haven't done a deep dive into the spreadsheet yet to see where we would stand with all the other communities, based on conversations with contractors and people like that are actually working here. We're pretty close to everyone else.
Yeah, our research from the other communities, again, a majority of them probably already use a formula that we're using, which is really simple, the $6, for every $1,000 of construction cost. And that fluctuates a little bit. I think we saw one community that's only like $4, some $5. It is definitely a very easy formula to apply, but again, that captures everything. So, from what you report from your construction costs for a fence permit all the way to the new construction, everything's the same. Whereas again, with the building valuation model with ICC, it's broken down into the use group. So I don't know, just something we're kind of like looking into and seeing if that would make sense. I think maybe, would there be any questions just on this category right now, maybe that you have, and then we can jump into the other ones.
Yeah, Steve.
So let me get this. A lot of times we pass these site plans at Board of Aldermen, and then we just walk away, and we don't see what happens on the back end when the guy walks in with his plans. So that's what I'm trying to get my mind around. So whether I walk in to pay this permit fee, whether I'm building a house or a hotel, I'm charged that $6 per thousand.
That's correct.
Okay. That sounds cheap to me.
It probably is on bigger projects, because the cost of construction of those is more. Whereas, and it may be high for things like kitchen remodels, and so some of these kitchen remodels are getting into some pretty fair amount of money. Because like a 5B residential construction is the lowest square foot cost in the table. It pretty much goes up once you start getting into commercial and non-combustible construction and all of the types of construction that cost more.
But when somebody throws their plans on your desk, you ask them, how much is this going to cost? Is that correct? I mean,
Yes.
so they could be fudging a little bit on the cost of what it is to build that home or that hotel. Or, I mean, what's the backup there? You're just taking their word for it?
No, if it seems a little sketchy, we'll ask for a cost breakdown or proof of how they're going to do this for that amount of money. We do tend to verify it through the ICC table and do a comparison with that and multiply it out. But there are some contractors who try to, they figured out that that's the easiest way to lower a permit fee.
But if you went to this ICC, then it would be a cost per square foot. And you've got to feel, I would imagine, what the cost per square foot is in Brentwood to build a house right now.
Yeah, we're probably looking at, a lot of it is subjective depending on the level of finish, but you're probably looking at $150 to $200 a square foot.
Okay.
They're selling for $225 to on up.
All right. And then Lisa, this was adopted back in 2014. So you pretty well work your budget based on fees that we established way back in 2014 for planning and development budget.
That's true, because we're not collecting them any differently. So yeah, I mean, the way we collected them dates pre-2014, but the last time it was reviewed to see if there should be any increases to the fees were 2014. So we haven't, our costs have raised, but in essence, we haven't, raised our fees. So that's why we're looking into it.
Unless you got a lot of building going on, but then at the same time, you've got the cost of sending inspectors out if you've got a lot of activity.
Right. And like Steve had mentioned, because again, I just wanted you to kind of get an idea of how we even calculate and how we process these things. So Steve had mentioned in his comments that residential, there's more or less going to be eight to nine kind of planned inspections, based on your foundation, your framing, your rough-ins. But when it comes to commercial, then it's a little bit of a guess. And, I would use the hotel as an example. So the hotel reported their construction cost. And based on what the figure they gave us, which again, we were able to look at that and kind of review that in terms of what they had submitted to the city with their pro forma. And so, again, I mean, it was what it was, but that generated a fee, I want to say about, $95,000, and that was based on reported construction costs. But then also the guesswork kind of came in, like how much, how many inspections do we think we're going to go out and do for a hotel? Well, we haven't experienced a lot of hotels, so that's a little bit of a guesswork too. But yeah, overall, their permit, I think for that again is obviously one of the most significant projects we've had here, and that's just to give you some idea of what the building permit fee was based on that and inspections.
But if you went with this ICC suggestion, and by using square footage, you can kind of back into this to support your annual budget, right? Because that's what they're looking at in the beginning, is what it costs for you to run your department, and you adjust those permit fees to help it to operate your department.
Right. Yeah, and we just looked at this preliminary, and I don't know if Bo, I know Bo even ran some numbers for me a little bit too, but I think our department budget this year is about, what is it, 565,000 or so. And then we had to back out some that we don't feel were related to building department costs, but otherwise everything else is pretty well related to, just what gets driven by the building department and so forth, the building division. So, but yeah, that's generally how it works. So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Jeff or Nancy? Yeah, I would say, I mean, I am in favor of taking a look at this too. I mean, I feel like, I mean, so yeah, a lot of these haven't changed and a lot of them are level, but the ones that based on construction costs seem like they're going to fluctuate over time. I mean, you know, an 8-foot 2x4 is like $9 right now. So, you know, I don't know. It almost seems like this, and maybe it's not large enough to matter, but it might be driving bad behavior on builders in terms of wanting to use cheaper materials. Whereas if you went to something on the ICC, that might drive good behavior of, you know, reducing square footage and using higher quality materials, which would be better off for us. So I think that would be a very worthwhile comparison to take a look at our surrounding towns. And I'm glad you're including St. Louis County, because I think that will be some form of bracketing thing on towns as well. So.
And if there are no more questions on that one, then the next category I would say would be occupancy permits and inspections. So just to give you an idea how that works, the occupancy inspections are always, what happens is it gets triggered by if there's a sale of property and then there becomes a change in the occupant, or if a person is going to rent out to an occupant, or also for a change of use. And that's for both commercial and residential. So currently the way the system is, for commercial and residential, we charge occupancy permits, the certificate of occupancy, but we don't charge for residential inspections, for occupancy inspections. And that we found out, I would say if you went ahead and just surveyed communities in terms of who doesn't charge for occupancy residential inspections, I mean, I don't know of any other communities that don't charge for it. So I know it's been this way in Brentwood a long time, but there's still, you know, obviously are just staffing overhead costs that come with that. So, but there's also, I think, reasons for it based on some of Steve's experiences and the other inspectors' experiences. And I think if we would just start looking at charging for the residential occupancy inspections, it really would just help us in terms of what we're really trying to achieve here in the department. So again, Steve, I don't know if, I know you had a couple of examples maybe you were going to share with them.
Yeah, I'll give you one from each side. That we have some really good property managers and landlords who tend to send their maintenance people in before they have us out there. Those people are the ones who usually get a pass on the first trip. A lot of them tend to use us to create a punch list for them, and then there's sometimes comments about, you know, well, you guys are just looking for stuff so you can charge us for a second one. And our answer is, well, we didn't charge you for the first one, so we're not charging you for the second one either. As an extreme, we had one just a couple of weeks ago. We made 7 trips to one condo. Now, a couple of those were just no-shows. It wasn't issues that they were doing, but for some reason, the owner decided he was going to do his own work, and he just wasn't getting it right. The ones who send their maintenance people in there first are the easiest. Those guys, a lot of those guys know from experience what to check first. We do have a checklist out there that we will provide to people. I think it's also on the website. So no one is going into this blind unless they want to. Based on my conversations with property managers and real estate agents, they're really surprised that we don't charge for residential occupancy inspections. I was thinking about it, you know, if we want to try to soften it a little bit, we could change and call for an inspection fee and say one re-inspection, there's no charge for. It would probably help people get acclimated to what we think is the correct procedure to do it. And then it would stop the comments that we're just looking for nitpicky items to generate another permit fee. That's about all I have on that, really.
The only other thing we were going to add to this particular topic is, and I think it has probably worsened because of COVID, but again, I'm speaking for both residential and commercial, but we're having more people that are moving in before that they've received, even before they've scheduled an inspection or have received a permit. And so some of these communities that we're looking at actually charge, a fee up front if it's occupied. And, hopefully once the word would maybe get out, then we wouldn't see that so often. And some of it, I guess, a little bit would be, again, with COVID and maybe people just being reluctant to have inspections done. So, I understand that, but still, like, there's commercial work too, that we're seeing a lot more people get started on projects, before they've scheduled inspections, got their permits. And so, I don't know, it just might be one thing to also consider, but I don't know. Again, it's kind of what we're looking for a little bit, for some direction at some point from the committee. I realize, you might not also, this is just kind of to get information to you this evening, but in the future, I think we'll be looking for direction on some of these things.
Yeah, Jeff, you had your hand up first, and then Nancy.
Yep, sorry, thank you. So I guess I'm confused because I was trying to find my way through the documents here. We don't charge, when you said residential permitting fees, we don't charge a fee at all for occupancy?
No, we have a $45 fee for the occupancy permit, which is typically paid for by the tenant. Or
But not
the new person moving in.
New person coming in, no fees.
Well, yeah, the new tenant. That's the information that is on the occupancy permit. It's whoever who's living in the house. Where we don't charge a fee is for the housing inspection before the occupancy permit is issued. That we do not charge for at all.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I own a property in Richmond Heights and they charge $65 for the inspection and then a $15 fee for the resident to get the permit to move in. I mean, that just as an anecdotal, I'm sure you guys are aware of that, but I think there should be some level of structure and fees associated with inspections and the occupancy permit itself.
Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also this issue of people doing things before they have the permits. I mean, I even hear about that. Oh, they poured the foundation before they even had the permit. I mean, that happened. I hear that a lot. So if I'm hearing that a lot, it must go on even more. I would, I don't want us to be so fee heavy, but I definitely think some sort of penalties, and just knowing that people here know that Brentwood's watching is good.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, because I'm familiar with a couple, just from a rental standpoint. And usually there is, if it's vacant, you're charged less than occupied. So there's an incentive, to have it done. You're almost penalized if you do it while it's occupied, as far as the fee goes. And then for multiple units under one owner, I know like in the city of St. Louis, you can get up to 4 inspections if they're in the same building. They charge you, for instance, $90 for the first one and then $40 for the next 3. I know we don't have a lot of, rental apartment buildings, but I'm thinking of the Vanmark Way over that way. I mean, that might be an incentive to get them to cluster so the inspector goes over there one time instead of visiting 4 units separately. It kind of gives them incentive to cluster them together, so you just do it all in one visit. Something to think about. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts are, I mean, I feel like the philosophy of why we do an occupancy permit is different than the permitting, right? The permitting is to make sure the buildings are safe, and we're trying to recoup the costs of our inspectors going out there and doing that work. I feel like the occupancy permit is to make sure that we have the right kind of people, that we don't have too many occupants in a house. That's how we kind of control making sure that it's what we want in the city, and maybe maybe you move the onus onto the inspection and take it off of the occupancy permit so that the person isn't having you come out there 7 times to do that inspection, because that would be on the owner instead of the tenant. I mean, I would be curious if everybody knows that they need to get an occupancy permit. For me personally, I didn't get one in my house until I ran for alderman and found out I was non-compliant. So I don't know. I feel like the philosophy maybe is a little different there. Just my 2 cents.
I've run into people who are moving in, say, from other parts of the state that have never got an occupancy permit for where they live. People who live in the area, pretty much every municipality around us requires occupancy permits. Just backing up just a minute for the working without a permit, I don't know of anybody who's gotten a foundation in without getting stopped first, but it happens a lot on smaller projects and on like mechanical, electrical, plumbing. I mean, we're really, especially since COVID, we're really chasing MEP contractors around for things like water heaters, furnaces. We're finding them in, I had one the other day as an example. It was a water heater that looked brand new, and people don't realize there's a date on them, manufacturer date on them. And I asked the guy, when was this put in? He goes, that's been in there for 4 or 5 years. I go, well, it wasn't made till October of 20. So, I mean, you're gonna need to clean this up because there's a couple of violations on here. So, I went to a place today where I caught a guy tearing out a kitchen, and after I got done talking to him and left, I walked across the street and caught some electricians doing some wiring on a house without a permit. So it seems like it's just getting more common, especially since COVID. We've noticed it a lot with occupancies where people were just having their tenants move in, and we were dealing with it later. And with all the stuff going on with that, we were more lenient. I mean, we're trying to work with people, but we spent a lot of time in occupied homes too during the pandemic. So I think there's definitely is a better way to do it. We tried to, that's why we put a new checklist out there for the most common items that come up. And we're hoping that people will address that before they get us out there. It definitely will cut down on the numbers of inspections. That's all.
Lisa and Steve, it sounds like you were looking for some input there. I don't know if you're getting that based on this conversation or.
Well, I do actually. I just feel like overall there's support to move this forward and see what we come up with. It really does take up kind of an incredible amount of time, which that's our jobs. That's fine. But I just didn't want to like start pouring a lot of time into it and then realize that it just didn't seem like maybe something that elected officials, would be ready to do. I mean, we're going to be looking for fees that are fair and nominal and things like that. But if we can also just kind of correct some of the things that we're seeing out there, I think that's another win for why we're doing this and everything. So I think that's good. I mean, that's generally what I got is that there's support to kind of look into this further and bring something back. So.
Is this something maybe we should reach outside of Brentwood? I mean, instead of kind of reinventing the wheel ourselves. I mean, I think comparing the other towns is good, but maybe bring outside experts to make recommendations. Is that something you would want to do, Lisa?
I think right now we're still probably pretty good. So I'd like to still just kind of run with it internally a little more, but if something like that would come up, I could talk to the city administrator about it. But I think we're good for now.
Okay.
And then the third category then quickly is just planning and development applications. And then anything else that we permit and authorize that aren't in the other 2 categories. So along with planning and development applications, which would be your rezoning, your conditional use permits, your variance applications, and so forth. What I'm looking for there is, it seems like communities kind of follow two tracks. Either they charge more for their application fees, but also with that higher application fee, they're recouping their costs that come about through processing it, meaning the public hearing notice that needs to be issued, and then the notices just to adjoining property owners. So, or, what I've also seen is they keep the fee a little bit lower, but then the applicant would be paying for those direct costs. So again, could do it either way. The way we're doing it right now is really, we just have a $100 application fee for the applications that I just mentioned. And so I think that would, probably again be reasonable to look at how we can go ahead and then we don't charge for the public hearing. We don't charge for those extra costs. So I think that's something that, would maybe be reasonable for us to look at. And yeah, so that's about all that I had for that one. That one might be a relatively simple one to kind of knock out too. What I eventually want to do is, I'm hoping that all the different fees and applications we talked about tonight, it doesn't necessarily all have to be on one table, like that table we shared with you at the beginning of the discussion. Maybe it does get broken out into these categories or something. But in my mind, it seems like it would be a lot easier to review this periodically, maybe on a 3-year cycle or something, when you have a table and then you're just passing an ordinance in order to, update those numbers. And so that's why I kind of think, again, when we talked about the table being in there, that one might be kind of an easier one, at least to do, because we know how to do that. So some of these fees, I'm not sure how they got established. And so I don't know if there might be references to fees in the municipal code, which is something that administration is also helping us kind of review and research. So we'll get it all together, though. It's certainly all doable, but I just, again, wanted to just make sure that it seemed like something we should be certainly devoting time to. But, and I don't know if anybody had questions then on that last category. Otherwise,
Well,
that's what we had.
I think that the timing is perfect for this, along that conversation we had about, what are the changes we're expecting to see when Brentwood Bound is done. I mean, I still personally think that we're going to see a wave of new construction, renovation. I mean, a big segment of our town is probably going to be transformed as a result of Brentwood Bound. So I think the timing of doing this right now is perfect, in my opinion. Okay, any other questions from anybody? Okay, we'll move on to item 11, citizen comment. Kelly, anybody? Nobody?
No, there's nobody there.
Okay, we'll move on to item 12, adjournment. Looking for a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
And good night, all.
Thank you.
Hey.